Hey everybody, I want to thank everybody for joining us today for our weekly Monday workshop. As you can tell, we got more of a summer vibe today. It's a beautiful day out. We're all working from home. So I figured, why not do this video outside and, enjoy the summer and the nice weather that we have right now. So for those who have joined us the last couple of weeks, you'll notice today's a little bit different, obviously being outside, but it's just me again. So the last few weeks, we've been very fortunate to have some great guests join us and really provide some great input for students in terms of what they should and shouldn't include on a resume and what to do when you're looking for job positions and what to actually do if you end up being fortunate enough to be called in for an interview. But today's topic I want to talk about is a little bit different. I know that in the past few weeks we've really covered a lot of issues like resume building, interview tips, and things like that. So I want to change it up a little bit. I've also enjoyed the last few where we've done Q&A, where we've had a lot of users and people on Facebook reach out to us and ask some great questions, and that was a lot of fun because it gave me an opportunity to see what are you looking for? What kind of questions do you have? But today, I want to talk about the importance of content and how important content is, especially in today's world, and how critical it can be. And I know that with a lot of students and younger people, it's intimidating. They don't want to be putting out content, but you notice that the ones who are putting out content are usually the ones who get hired. And I'm going to give you a little story before we actually get into the session. But when I used to work prior to doing Swob, when I was working in marketing, I remember working with a gentleman who, great interview he had. But one of the reasons why we were so drawn to him, and one of the reasons why we ended up hiring this individual, was because he had a YouTube page. And his YouTube page had nothing to do with marketing. It was all about gaming and kind of retro games, things like that. But it was the fact that he was putting himself out there. He wasn't afraid to turn on the camera and just speak and go with it. And so that was one of the things we found really, really appealing about him. And it's funny, he never thought that was going to help him with his interview, and including that on his resume was something he didn't even want to include. But what he decided that he was going to, and we were so glad that he did, because it just showed, he's creative, he's not afraid, and he's willing to kind of go out and put that content out there. Even if nobody's looking at it, he's still doing it. And so that's what I want to talk about today, is really the importance of creating content and what it means to be putting it out there and what you should and shouldn't be putting out there. So, a lot of people, for example, are interested in food. And obviously, we all like to eat. I clearly am guilty of that. But, one of the things that I talk about is, if you're passionate about something, even if it's like, food, gaming, sports, whatever it is, starting a YouTube channel or an Instagram page just to share your passions, it's not only a fun hobby to do, and it's also something that, obviously you have fun while doing it, because you're not going to start a YouTube channel or an Instagram page and, not talk about things that you're passionate about. You obviously want to do them because you're passionate about these issues or these topics. And so, I always encourage people, do it. Create a channel, create an Instagram page, because the more content you're putting out in the universe, it doesn't matter whether you have 1 view or 10 views or 100 views or 1,000 views. Everybody starts off with nothing, but the more content you put out there, it's something that you have in your pocket to use, almost like a portfolio. So a lot of art students, for example, when they're applying for different jobs in the art field or in the graphic design field, they're putting together a portfolio. And in their portfolios, it's just a list of things that they've worked on, a bunch of projects that they've completed in the past. And it's essentially the same thing with an Instagram page or a YouTube channel. So that's what I really want to talk about, is really just that importance of doing it, because it can seem intimidating. But before we begin and start actually going into this, I always like to keep these sessions pretty short. I want to get to the point. So I think we're going to try to keep this between 15 and 20 minutes. I think that's a good time. But let's begin. So especially, depending on what you're looking to do with your career when you finish school, it can always depend. But obviously, if you're looking to get into a field like marketing and advertising, for example, especially even if you want to get into content writing, start by building your skills, learn from experts, and develop your tech skills, and don't be afraid to get creative with it. One of the things that you can always do, especially if you want to get into creating content, is have people look at it. You know, Even for myself, when I started putting out content, doing videos, writing blogs, doing articles, I always have people looking at them just to make sure, what I'm putting out there makes sense. But, even for me, when I have guests join us for these webinars, it's so great to get input and hear from other people and hear what they have to say and offer up their opinions. And it's great content. It makes for great content, and it's providing value to those who are joining. And even if somebody happens to find it on YouTube or whatever, and they're scrolling and they see it and they click on it, if they find value from it and it's one person, that's a win. And I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of people are afraid to put out content because they think, oh, I'm going to get 1 or 2 views. I'm only going to have a handful of subscribers or whatever it might be, or a handful of followers. But, everybody started with nothing. And, I take a look at Gary Vee, for example. For those who don't know Gary Vee, you should go check him out on Instagram. He's always talking about creating content and putting things out there. And he always talks about, you start off with 1 view or 1 subscriber, but it can grow. And if an employer sees, so for example, obviously as an employer myself, whenever we're looking to hire somebody, I will always do a Google search of that person's name. And you better believe if I'm doing it, other employers are doing it as well. But if I Google somebody's name and I see that they have a YouTube channel, it piques my curiosity. I want to click on that. I want to look at the content that they're putting out there, regardless if it has anything to do with what we're doing or the job that they're applying to. For myself, I'm a big sports fan, and I've seen individuals who've started YouTube channels just to talk sports, and I love it. I love it because it's a conversation and it's something that, it's interesting and it grabs my attention. So my point is, when I see people putting out content, when I myself am hiring, I like to see that. And for me, it shows me that you're not afraid to open up the camera and start speaking. And look, even myself, you see some of the content that we've put out or that I've put out even in the past. It's not always perfect. It's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be pretty, but you keep learning, and the more you do it, the better you'll become and the more confident you are when doing so. So I think it's really important. And, even if you want to go the extra mile, even if you wanted to create a YouTube channel and really, make it above and beyond, there are courses you can enroll in. So there are ways to kickstart your career and kickstart your channels or your Instagram page, which can then help kickstart your career. So I do think it's really important to create content, and even blog posts. Blog posts are another great thing to do because, they're really easy to do. There's so many platforms that you can write blogs on now, and they can be about anything. So when I was in school, I started a blog where I talked about sports. Again, that's one of my biggest passions. It's one of my biggest interests. And sports is sort of my escape that I, just love it, and I can relax and, I focus my mind on it. So that's one of my biggest passions. And when I was a student, just because I wanted to, nobody told me to do it or nobody forced me to do it. I wanted to start a blog and talk sports. And so I did. And for me, it was fun to put out there. But at the time, I didn't necessarily think that it would help me when it came to starting my career. I just did it because I was passionate about it and I wanted to do it. But later on when I graduated and when I started working in my career and when I started in marketing, people would ask me if I've ever done anything on the side or if I have any sort of content that I've put out there. And, I did. I had a blog, and it was cool because it was something that the employer that I interviewed with, they were asking me questions about it. And it was something where it was shifting the focus from the actual interview and the company and the role, but we got to talking about the content that I was creating. And it had nothing to do with marketing or advertising or content or social media. It was all about sports. But that conversation lasted about 10, 15 minutes in the interview. And the interviewer that I was with was also passionate about sports, big sports fan. And we got back, we were just talking. It was a conversation. And, before we knew it, we'd killed 15 minutes of the interview just talking about sports. Now, long story short, I ended up getting that job. Whether or not it was because of the content that I was putting out there, I don't think it necessarily was, but I don't think that hurt. So I think it's really important putting out content, and it doesn't matter, like it's not always going to be great. Like I said, it's not always going to be the best content, and you don't have to always make sure that you don't always have to make it look pretty and great. As long as the quality is there, and that's what's truly important about putting out content is quality over quantity. You don't have to be posting 5 videos a day on YouTube or creating 10 blogs a month, because if that's going to sacrifice the quality, then you don't want to do it. But if you're creating maybe 2 blog posts a month that are really strong, or creating maybe a video per week that's really strong, it's great content. And there are so many things that people can do now, especially to make your content look nice. So if you're worried more about the aesthetics of how the content looks, especially if you have a YouTube channel, you want to have nice thumbnails or things like that, and you want to have a nice, pretty page, Canva's a great resource that you can use when you're putting out this content, and you can use that to make it look pretty. Even YouTube Studio, that's a great way where you can go and add some fun graphics, add some music if you'd like, or add some sound effects. So there's so many things that you can do when you're creating content. And, especially even on like your LinkedIn page or your resume, it's something you should include. If you've created a blog, that's work that you've done. So even though it's not necessarily formal work experience, it's something that you could share and talk about. So the point of today that I really want to get across is creating content isn't easy. You have to be dedicated. You really have to be focused. But one of the beautiful things about content is it could be whatever you want. So whether it's food, sports, music, anything. As long as you're passionate about it and the quality is there, the more content you put out there, the better. And again, regardless if you start off with 1 subscriber, 1 view, you might even put out content there that gets nothing right away. But the more you're putting out there, it'll eventually get noticed, and it will do nothing but help you when it comes time to looking for a career. I can tell you from speaking to college and university professors on a daily basis, all the time, they are encouraging their students to put out content. And one of the reasons why they're always encouraging students to put content out there is because they know how valuable it is to an employer. And I can tell you myself, once again, that as an employer, if somebody has on their resume that they have a YouTube channel, you better believe 100% of the time I'm going to click on that. I might not love the content. I might not be passionate about what the person's putting out there, but the fact that they're doing it, I'm always going to click on it just to see what is available, or just to see what they're putting out there and what content is available. So to me, I think it's really, really important. And I know that, a lot of people don't want to do it, or they might feel intimidated by it, but there's some tips that you got to remember. So for example, like, be current, be up to date, be knowledgeable with what you're talking about. So you don't want to obviously start a YouTube page or an Instagram page or even a Facebook page and put out content that you don't have any clue about. So if I'm talking about sports, you better believe I'm a sports fan. I'm not going to be talking about sports and never have watched, a hockey game in my life. So, make sure that obviously what you write about, you're passionate about. Stay current, understand your audience. So know that, again, for example, if you're creating a sports YouTube channel or an Instagram page where your focus is talking sports, and it could be all sports, you want to cater to your audience. You want to, you obviously know that other people that are going to view your content are more than likely going to be sports fans. So you also want to keep that in mind. And even when you're writing a blog, or if you're creating a blog, write often. Again, it's not always going to be perfect, but the more and more you do it, the more and more you practice, the more content that you're putting out there, each time it will get better and better. But what I'm not saying, though, is you don't want to write up a blog post and have nobody review it. Because even for myself, I consider myself a pretty strong writer when it comes to putting out content and writing blogs and articles. But even myself, I make mistakes. So I always make sure that I have at least 2 people review what I'm writing, because I don't want to put something out there in the universe to see that I'm not proud of. I'm only going to put out content that I'm proud of and that I know is quality and hopefully giving some value in return. So you want to keep that in mind as well. And you want to give examples too. So if, for example, again, if you're talking sports, you want to give examples about what you're talking about, and you want to make sure that it's obviously relevant to your audience and relevant content to what you want to actually be creating. And you also don't want to be talking about yourself when you're creating content. You obviously don't want to go and start a YouTube channel or an Instagram page that is just really promoting yourself. I mean, unless you have your own individual business where you're doing things on your own, then that's one thing. But keep that in mind that you want to be putting out content that is valuable to others. And yeah, I mean, I just I can't stress it enough. The more you're putting out there, the better it is for you. Employers are all about this kind of, or they're all about content these days. And I think it's something where, when employers see that you're doing this, especially in fields like marketing, advertising, it's so important and it helps you stand out so much. I can't stress it enough. So no, it's not easy to put content out there all the time, but the more you do and the more you practice at it and the more you understand your sort of niche audience, the better it'll become. And you'll see your numbers will start to eventually grow. Now you have to also give it time. I like to use a reference. It's like gardening. You might put some seeds in a garden and it's going to take a few months to actually see something come out, but you have to be patient. You just got to keep at it. You got to keep watering every day and you'll see the results will come. So I just want to keep that in mind, that it's something where you have to be patient, but you also have to be consistent. We're at about 17 minutes now for this, so I think this is a good number, a good length. I don't want to just sit here and ramble on about the same things, but I do hope that for whoever joined this session, there was some value in it. This isn't something that we've talked about in the past, is putting out content. We've obviously focused more on what not to include on a resume and what you should include on a resume and different things that you can do, best practices when it comes to interviews. But I always encourage the audience that's watching this, send us your questions. If you have questions that you want us to cover, send them our way. We're very open to all opportunities or all questions. And if you have a question that you want to ask us, please, we encourage you, send us an email. Our info email, it's info@swobapp.com. So if you have any questions or if there's any topics that you want to see covered on these Monday streams, let us know. We will cover them. But other than that, I hope that you're able to take some value from this and really understand that content, the more you put out, the better it is, and it's never going to hurt you to have it. So just keep that in mind. But I want to thank everybody for joining, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you again next Monday. Take care, everybody.